I'd like to call the East Greenbush Central School District Board of Education meeting for November 12th, 2025 to order. We are all present today, so if we could rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Missing all of them. Okay, first up, Student Council. Matthew.
Hello, thank you for having me. So last Wednesday, Student Council made veterans cards for veterans. Were distributed on Friday, and I hope that all the veterans that received them love them as much as those who made them. On Thursday, last Thursday, students in English 11 Honors went to Salem to learn about everything that was happening during the Crucible. That's the book that we are either reading or has been read in class. And there's a lot of history in Salem, obviously, but I think everyone also had a lot of fun and learned a lot there. And then last Friday, students in Symphonic Band went to Belltop to perform in their Veterans Day Assembly. I had a lot of fun. It was really fun to see all the veterans and the whole assembly. It was a really great time. And then on Thursday and Friday, Once Upon a Stage had both of their performances. On Thursday was the teacher performance, and on Friday was the main performance. I think that both shows went great. I think the audience had a great time, and I can't wait for the following Once Upon a Stages that we will see in the future. Today, there was a trip to New York City that was through the English elective class that plays The Thing. There were many students that went. Some saw Broadway shows, but in general, it was just a nice field trip to New York City. Tomorrow, we have our blood drive. Last time I checked, we only had 6 slots that weren't filled, which I think is really good for all the volunteering. I personally can't wait to give my blood. And then for our next event, we have a canned food drive and a pie Mr. Harkin. So the way that it's going to work is students will bring in different canned foods that we will donate to those in need, and they will receive a raffle ticket, and it will go in a big bowl, and whoever wins will get to pie Mr. Harkin, I believe on the end of the day on November 21st. And then we have our next meeting next Wednesday, where we're going to be discussing what we will be doing during the winter, so December and January, all of the fun events and fundraisers that we will be doing. I've heard a lot of great suggestions, and I can't wait to see what we do next. Thank you.
Matthew, it was great. The Once Upon a Stage was, you guys, it was awesome. Blown away with that. And then Jen and I were at Belltop. Band was awesome. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Is there any way we can rig the contest where Mr. Mahar and I can have the opportunity to pie Mr. Harkin?
I mean, if you donate enough cans, then you get more raffle
There you
tickets.
go.
Maybe we get a pallet? Thanks, Matthew.
Okay, next up, approval of the draft minutes from October 29th. I believe Mike and Cindy were absent, but everybody else was here. So can I get a motion to approve? Robert, and a second. RP, all those in favor? Those abstaining? Okay. All right, board forum, starting with Kevin.
Good. Thank you.
All right, I just got 2 quick items I wanted to say. One was I think we're off to a great start for the year, and I just wanted to just emphasize like the you know, that this is largely a transition year. We have a lot of new admin, you know, from Dr. Coates, Ms. Lisa Mahar, right, our new transportation supervisor, a new board president, and the reason why I mentioned that, and I think we're off to an excellent start, like the way that we're communicating, the work that we got going on. So I mentioned that because we also have 4 new board members as well, and we're approaching like the halfway point of the school year. So I'm just saying, like, thinking about ways of communicating expectations. I think sometimes it's good to just do like a refresh, a recap, right? Because sometimes it's hard when you're a new board member to say, what exactly do you expect? How do you like to be communicated with? What do you expect for the year? So I think sometimes just retouching on those pieces, right, of board governance after they've had a chance to kind of acclimate themselves is a great, it's a great opportunity at that point in time to kind of touch base on some of those points of expectations moving forward. That was one piece. I did want to just say for next time, it would be great to have an update on Mr. Simon's per diem basis. I know when we originally signed on, the idea was, and part of it, like totally recognizing everything that's going on. I totally recognize his experiences being provided to the district. I just think also thinking about the taxpayer, the way that it looks, it'd be great to just understand looking forward, what is the plan? How is that been going? And where are we at with that? So those are the two items that I'm just thinking of.
I wanted to mention that I had the opportunity to go to the Social Studies Honor Society induction, which I didn't even know that content areas had their own, but it was very well done. It was exciting. And after it was completed, all the students went in different directions because they're all involved in so many different things. So it was exciting to see those students. Once Upon a Stage has been mentioned. It was a lovely evening. And what I didn't know was that students put on that production. So congratulations to all the students for that and for the Social Studies induction.
Yeah, I just want to recognize our veterans, and I also want to say that the district does a great job. I was able to go to Green Meadow, and been going there for a lot of years. Sam was there, and it's just a wonderful celebration. And I know it does a lot of things across the whole district. I've been to many of them at all our schools over the years, and it's one recognition time that is unique to this district. Not a lot of schools do this, and it just welcomed by our community, welcomed by our veterans, and it's a great honor for them to be recognized on that day by our school. So thanks to the administration for putting this together, the staff, and it was, again, a wonderful occasion. Yep.
Yeah, two things. First, I just want to give heartfelt condolences to the family, friends, colleagues, and students of Columbia High School teacher, Mr. Hill. I know a lot of students and the EGTA with Ms. Hastings got together organizing fundraisers, and I hope that was really helpful for the community. And it's good to see the East Greenbush community come together like that. And again, we're very sorry about Mr. Hill. Also wanted to thank our food services just for their ongoing work. Their work is always important, providing meals to our students, but particularly now with the SNAP crisis, important more than ever. And thank you to, I can't list all of them, but just across the district, our students and staff and faculty who are engaged in food pantry efforts and nutritional efforts. For example, I know at Green Meadow, the Student Council is collecting donations for the Concerns You Food Pantry. Thank you to the coordinators and community supporters of our backpack program, which provides nutritional needs to students on the weekends as well. So thank you always for those efforts, everyone in the community through volunteer work, through our and through food services that provide foods for our students, but especially now more than ever. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to echo the sentiments about Once Upon a Stage. I had the opportunity to go, and it was just such a fantastic event. It was fun to watch them have so much fun. They really cared about the production and each other, and it was just a really great night. And I also wanted to congratulate Chris Diedrich on his recent induction to the New York State Baseball Hall of Fame.
Moving on to the public forum. Residents, students, employees, and business representatives of the East Greenbush Central School District may address the board on matters concerning programs and/or operations of the district, other than matters involving personnel. Members of the board do not directly respond to citizen concerns during the public forum. If a response is appropriate, either the president or superintendent will contact the individual in the near future. Those persons wishing to address the board will be recognized by the chair of the meeting and should state for the record their name and address or affiliation with the district or business. While the board does not wish to infringe upon free speech protections, it must be stressed that the visitors' forum is not deemed to be an open forum. The board president will conduct the forum for the orderly and efficient operation of board business. In addition, any remarks which may be considered defamatory or stigmatizing are prohibited and will be declared out of order. All comment shall be limited to 5 minutes.
Dan Wagner, president of the EGTA. I just wanted to extend my thanks to Dr. Coates and to the administration for how everything was handled the day of Rich's passing, to Mike Harkin and all the admin, the support staff, our social workers, Audra DeBacco, people that came in from Questar. We really felt supported in that day, and especially allowing us to use time to go to Rich's funeral on Monday. I hate to bring more bad news, but we also lost on Monday Pat Balcom, who taught here for over 30 years and was our retiree chair in a car accident Monday around 2 o'clock. But this district does a really good job of coming together and supporting each other in these tough times. So I just want to thank you for your understanding and compassion in this time. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Moving on to the budget orientation workshop. Subi.
So, I'm gonna just take one little bit of latitude. I'm gonna invite Mr. Grignon up. This past week, we had a great opportunity to celebrate as a community with a event that maybe none of us will see again in the community in our lifetime. And I'm going to invite Mr. Grignon to just give an overview. But first, I'd like to thank him. This was something that was pulled together very quickly because there were so many uncertainties on what was and was not going to happen. And he took great leadership in making sure that as many of our students, our community members, and our faculty and staff could partake in something wonderful that put the smiles on many people's faces in the community. So with that, Mr. Grignon, thank you, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Coates. Yes, it was a tremendous experience to both plan, work with people down from New York City, and they're meeting their expectations. But it was really a team effort, starting with Chief Rosinski from East Greenbush Police, who had the information, shared it with Dr. Coates and myself. And then it was really a collaborative effort where Dr. Coates and I would meet quite frequently, where I just pop in right into his office and be like, this is what I'm thinking. And he was giving me the latitude to make changes and things like that, that I thought would be in the interest to make sure that it was a school-wide event, but also open to community members, because we had many community members pull off to the side of the road, join us on that special occasion, which was fantastic. And more importantly, if you were there and you were able to see the face of the young boy, Liam Russ, and his mom, I think it was the first time I've ever seen him be so shocked and like taken back. But it was truly a memorable experience. Is the way I explained it to the students of Janae. I made an analogy to the movie Inside Out. We were creating a core memory, and that was a core memory for our school community, but also the larger East Greenbush community as well. And that really could not have come without the support of one, Mrs. Russ and Liam inviting us into sharing in that experience, but then more importantly, working with Dr. Coates and the central office team, East Greenbush Police, State Police. I mean, there are so many agencies that really came together to make this work. And even to the point where I was meeting with Dr. Coates saying, all right, we're still on for 12:30. And then all of a sudden my phone rings and I'm like, I got to go, because the truck was leaving, and they totally threw our time schedule right off. So as we know, all well-intended plans don't always go the way we want them to, but we were able to pull it off, and we were sure everyone got lunches and recesses. So from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate Dr. Coates, you allowing us to have this opportunity. It was a wonderful community event, and it was enjoyed by all. So thank you.
Okay. Before we segue into budget, I just wanted to pick up on something that Mr. Buno brought up. It was Veterans Day, and a very special thank you to our veterans, but I also want to take the occasion to thank our board. One of the remarks of our building administrators that the fact that we had representation of central office and the Board of Education at every ceremony was noticed by all of our building administrators that held the ceremony. And not only was it a great respect to our veterans, it was a great respect to our school community. So thank you to all of you for making the time and taking away from your work and your lives to be able to be there to support the community. As we know, and it's hard to believe, it is time to start to talk about the 2026-2027 budget. And we have on the agenda for tonight to adopt our budget calendar as we discussed at our last meeting. And part of that adoption is our first quote unquote education session, if you will, on learning the components of the budget. In a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Mulligan to start to guide us through that process. And what we've prepared for you tonight is really some foundational information to make sure that everyone is operating from the same starting point. There are definitions of different types of funding types from revenue and expenditure codes. There are explanations of how the budget works on an intricate basis. This is truly meant to be a conversation. So at any point as we are going through, please feel free to interrupt. I'm going to let Mrs. Mulligan take the lead, but there may be times where we work together on explanations. This is meant to establish, like I said, a solid foundation so that as we start to plug real-time information that we get from Albany into what our actual budget is going to look like, that we all have a common understanding of how the budget functions. Like I said, we're starting early for a reason. There's a lot of uncertainty with what is coming for the 26-27 fiscal year. And we feel that with your guidance, it is prudent to start that conversation now. So with that, Ms. Mulligan, I want to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Coates. Well, it's hard to follow after Rockefeller Tree and veteran celebrations, but just like Mr. Grignon said, the budget is a plan, so hopefully we develop a good plan so we can move forward into the 26-27 year, as we are just exiting the 24-25 year and into the 25-26 year. It's funny, I always feel like we're in 3 fiscal years at any point in time. So just a little bit overview of the agenda. We're going to go over revenues, the sources of revenues, the state aid categories. We're also going to talk about the New York State tax levy cap and provide some additional background information on that. And then we'll also dive into expenditures, just into 3 different levels, almost like a funnel, like starting very broadly into the 3-part budget, which is our administration, program, and capital, and then drilling down into our function areas, and then going a little bit deeper on the objects of expenditures. And then we'll briefly just talk about some upcoming budget considerations. So first with revenues, and as Dr. Coates said, if conversations, so any questions at any time, we can go over this in more detail. So this is our sources of revenue for the 25-26 budget. So we're really giving some baseline information on the current year 25-26 budget. We haven't started building the 26-27 budget yet. We're really early on that, but wanted to give some of these foundational concepts, be able to show you where we are from the budget standpoint today. So our primary sources of revenues are real property taxes and pilots, which are payment in lieu of tax agreements, and state aid. Basically, that accounts for 98% of our total operating revenues, which is our reoccurring revenues. And then we have a sliver of about $7.7 million, which is our accumulated savings, which is our fund balance and reserves that are balancing the budget. So those are those 2 little pieces, that red and green pie slice that's pulled out from the center there is the accumulated savings that is balancing the budget. So our total 25-26 budget is $115.2 million. Those real property taxes account for the just under $62 million, which is about 54% of the total revenue picture, including those accumulated savings. And then the state aid is just under 38 million at about 33% of the pie. So this is just intended to give you a little bit picture of where the overall sources of revenue are from.
Can I ask you a question? Sorry. I
Absolutely.
just looked
No.
through here and see it. So
Mhm.
the difference between fund balance and reserves is fund balance is coming from a specific allocated fund.
It's basically, we have different categories of fund balance. So there's an undesignated portion, which is, we've talked a little bit about that 4% level. And then we have what's appropriated to be used in next year's budget, which is that 4.4, that red pie slice. So that's the component that's being appropriated to use in this ensuing year's budget. And then the other category of fund balance is reserves. So those are restricted for a particular purpose. It
Oh, I
could
was thinking
be-
of the exact opposite. Okay, so the reserves are restricted.
Those are
the
the
fund
restricted
balance.
monies that either the voters or the board have specifically designated to set aside for a specific purpose.
Okay,
So this is the planned utilization of those funds.
Right. Okay, thanks.
So I want to go over a little bit about state aid revenue and what those major components are. Obviously, foundation aid is the largest component of our state aid. About $38 million is our total state aid, and 26 million of that is our foundation aid. And foundation aid is basically the unrestricted operating aid. There's a little definition there. It's basically what is the need of the district to serve their students, to provide a basic, sound education for all. And there's a lot of calculations in terms of needs and wealth ratios in there. And basically calculating what should the local share be. And then the difference is the state share, which is the foundation aid. So going from the 24-25 budget into 25-26, there was an increase, a decent increase in foundation aid for us compared to what you may have heard us talk about hold harmless, where there was a minimum of 2%. So we had a good increase in foundation aid last year. However, we had some adjustments with our expense-based aids, which can be volatile depending on what our spending is and what our aid ratios are. So although we did have an increase of $1.4 million in foundation aid, we had some decreases in the expense-based aid. So really our total state aid had only went up about $600,000 year over year from budget to budget. So just wanted to point out that even the picture can be different depending on the particular year situation. So these expense-based aids, I wanted to talk a little bit more about what are they, a little bit of an overview. So there's basically different categories. There's our building aid, which is directly related to our capital projects that we do. So that big capital project that we're doing now will be aided in the future. So the building aid that we're getting now is from prior capital projects. Transportation aid, we have an aid ratio. This is basically based on the expenses that we have on an annual basis. Is what we're reimbursed on a particular aid ratio. And then we have BOCES aid. So when we participate with BOCES, any expenses that we have with them is also aided. And then we have excess cost aid, which is in the students with disabilities area. And then lastly is the instructional materials aid, which is aid for textbooks. It's actually a per pupil allocation, but it's an up to per pupil allocation based on our actual spending.
Quick question on the BOCES aid. Is it possible to source some of our current operating budget through BOCES to get BOCES aid? Like I'm just asking because I've heard something about getting BOCES aid and using BOCES strategically. And I was just wondering, what does that look like?
So I'm just going to back up. So BOCES aid, so the operating budget for 25-26 includes $2.2 million in BOCES aid. So we are, using BOCES services to be aided. We look at shared services, our CTE programs, health and safety services, certain IT services. We're purchasing about $7 or so million in BOCES services that are being aided. Now, granted, some of those are special education services, which are all into a high cost aid bucket and aren't directly BOCES aidable. That's a different aid bucket. But outside of
Are you
that,
asking for how we get more?
That's what I'm asking.
Are there more?
Precisely.
I have no idea. Are there more services that we
Yes.
could, but are we losing local people to do that? Not local, but
So the one thing we need to be mindful of when you purchase a BOCES aid, when you're looking specifically at a service, most times there is a benefit of shared services. When you look at things like software or other things that are third-party purchases, you have to be critical of that because sometimes, yes, there's a benefit to going to a consortium buy. So for example, our internet service, we always have purchased through a BOCES service because that's largely very beneficial because they know that through, sometimes I like to call it the Costco of your internet purchases because everybody's buying it, they can give you a volume discount. Versus some of the one-offs, if you're looking for a new software, there's such an upcharge that BOCES has to charge for them to be able to procure it to provide the service. There's not a benefit to doing so. So you really have to be mindful of where's the benefit on what you're trying to procure for the district.
I'm sorry, I have a bunch of questions.
That's okay.
So when this foundation aid went up 1.4 million, hold harmless is still going to apply, we think, for 26, 27? We don't know that.
No. So sorry, Jim.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Go ahead.
So the state, let's back up a little bit to 10,000 feet. The state completed a universal study through the Rockefeller Institute on looking at, do we have to reconsider how foundation aid is applied to every school district across the state? They were looking at north of 50% of the districts throughout the state because of declining enrollment around the state being on hold harmless. And the governor made a very powerful statement 2 years ago that why are we paying for empty seats? Well, from a district perspective, as we look at mental health services, as we look at food service, as we look at increased transportation needs, special education needs, trying to compare the services that we provide now to where we were 20 years ago when the foundation aid formula was created, it's not the same.
Okay.
So the Rockefeller Institute study was meant to address that. Couple that with, we are one of the only districts in the area that is still seeing increasing enrollment. Therefore, that would mitigate where we are going to be still on formula, if you will, and not on hold harmless. That puts us in a good position. That's pending that where the state stands financially. I don't want to say it's been a political football, but every year there's been some tinkering to some extent with how the foundation aid formula has been applied.
Okay, thank you.
So that's what's a follow-up question. So the hold harmless is basically the minimum they're going to increase your foundation aid is 2% a year.
So no, that's what they have applied, but there has also been conversation that hold harmless has simply meant that you get the same that you got last year with no increase. So if your enrollment went down by 5%, that they're not going to take away foundation aid because of the increased number of services that you're having to provide. There's an enrollment formula that's embedded currently in the foundation aid formula that when your enrollment drops, according to this formula, you don't need as much to fund your essential services. Districts are trying to make very clear that's not the case. The number of social workers, psychologists, everything that we have to hire to back up the services that we're being asked to provide, we simply wouldn't be able to provide that if you start to pull money back in the foundation aid formula. So, to the second part of your question, after some back and forth, yes, to the second part of what you said, the state has said, okay, we understand, we won't pull away, and we'll give you a minimum of 2%. But as they're watching more and more school districts come off formula and go to hold harmless, the question is going to keep coming to the surface on where do we go from here?
Even that 2%, that's strictly has to do with foundation aid.
That's none of the
Because if you
use-based
look at
aids.
The numbers were down 1.6% increase over last year. So what is the reason for those decreases in the expense-based aids?
So that's where I'm going to give it to you because you have the history of the budget better.
So it's really based on the amount of the spending in a given year, and there could be aid ratios that change from year to year. I'd have to drill into the specific regions as to the
Okay.
why
So-
those
so
did,
like
but
the building aid is 85% of whatever you spent in that time period. So that's going to fluctuate based on how much you spent.
right. So there's an actually part of the capital project. There's a debt service model that was set up for the capital project to ensure that when debt service falls off, the projects that as we claim, final cost reports will come on. So new aid will come on for that. So there can be fluctuations just in that, but like for the building aid, for example, what happened, there was also a corresponding decrease in our debt service. it balanced itself out. So on the budget side that was paying for the principal and interest, that also decreased. So the decrease in revenue had a neutral effect in the budget,
So it
which is
shows-
that tax neutrality we've been talking about.
So
with
it
that
shows that
capital
we're getting
project.
less, but we may be spending less.
But we may
also,
be
that's
spending
the
less,
reason why.
right. Yep. So that's an example on the building aid. Transportation aid, I'd have to go and look a little bit detail about BOCES aid. We're pretty steady with our BOCES services. So that's been pretty consistent. And then private and public and private excess aid, it just depends on the enrollments and the students that we're serving. And, you know, that changes all the time. Yeah, we could have a very high cost couple of students and the next year we may have different students that are not as high cost. So. Any other questions on the expense fee? Oh, yes,
Yeah, I
Robert.
have a follow-up to what you were saying. So, you know, some of these aids, like building aid, there's like a cap where you can only get so much aid for a particular building every few years. But is that the case for other aids like transportation aid or excess cost or instructional materials? Is it just the more we need to spend, the more we get reimbursed? Or do they have like a limit that like after a while?
It depends. So the
Yeah.
instructional material aid, that's easy. That's a per pupil. So it's based on enrollment numbers. So the cap is the per pupil amount
Okay.
times. And then, so in other words, let's say it's $350,000 is what the per pupil times the number of pupils is. With the max we could get is 350. So did we spend at least 350?
Mhm.
And that's been the case. So we've been maximizing that aid category as an example. Building aid, it's based on, so that what we were talking about, that cap is that maximum cost allowance. That's that rolling 5-year maximum cost that we can claim on a building project. So basically, if we're maximizing it, we're going to get 72 cents on a dollar, basically, on eligible project expenses that we claim. So that one's a little bit more complicated, and there's a more detailed schedule. Transportation aid is as long as it's eligible expenses, but the state aid reviewers, they review and they ask, well, why are you increasing? You know, did you have new routes? Did you increase your mileage? Did something change in your program to justify that increased level of expense? So it's not just about spending it unless there's a really good reason to do so based on increased need. Oh, okay.
But they would, if we can demonstrate need, they'll reimburse. They would not reimburse.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
okay.
I think the expense changes have been reasonable from year to year. So there hasn't been anything that has come to a point of like a question of cost per se. My time here. Okay. So just wanted to review a little bit about the state aid runs. So one of the things, you know, it's evolving. So recently, all the school districts have been filing all of their data for fiscal year end 24-25. So there's basically going to be a November database that comes out, which is the very first estimate for the 26-27 school year. So we'll get a very early initial look at what some of the aid runs look like. And then also what our actual aid is going to be for the 24-25 year. So even though we had our budget, it's a plan, whatever's in the enacted budget isn't necessarily it's not guaranteed because there could have been other data changes. So basically there's different runs of the state aid runs that happen throughout the year. We start with the November database, which is basically all of that data based on the current law is what we'll see for the state aid. And then come January, mid-January, the executive budget proposal will be released, which will be similar to the November estimates, except where the governor is proposing any particular changes to school aid. So that's really our real starting point in terms of looking at aid for the 26-27 school year. And then there's another database in February that comes out because there's changes that can happen. There's data changes, even though we filed our stuff, something may have come to our attention where we need to update our data. So districts will have new information that come out to them. And then finally, after all the budget negotiations, there'll be the enacted school aid run, which will hopefully be, you know, by April 1st. So just wanted to give you a little picture of, you know, what those cycles look like. And then I think the key point here is that they're estimates. They're not final. They're not, until everything is closed out, like even the 25-26 aid is still not final. So we don't have a picture. So when we look at how early we start and to like start projecting where we are this year, we don't have 100% confidence because we don't have the actual school aid run for 25-26 to say our budget numbers are excellent, you know, based on those enacted budget numbers. So our transportation aid, our building, all those things were filed based on our actual year-end results. So we'll actually see what the results of that is.
Think it's important also just to note, we're talking about these being estimates, and some of us who have worked in education for a long time, there have been mid-year reductions as well, which means that we take our plan and we have to make reductions mid-year and look for cost savings measures. That hasn't happened in a while. The last time that we had that occur was during COVID, that there was a threat, actually about a 20% reduction in state aid across the board. Luckily, tax revenues balanced and they were able to fund the budget. But I think before that was 2007, where there were some significant mid-year cuts that districts across the state, all agencies across the state, were forced to make reductions. So we always have to keep that in the back of our mind. Where are our spots that we would have to make cost savings measures somewhere in the midpoint of the school year?
Our expenditure picture is a lot more certain, correct? Like we like 70-80% of our budget is contracted. So it's like, even though we don't know how much money we're getting in, we definitely know pace wise where we are for this point of the year. And we likely with more certainty could project out where we will.
100%. But even so,
Yes.
with that certainty, if our revenue was cut by 20%, we'd either have to make the decision, are there reserves that we can access?
Yeah.
Or do we make mid-year reductions?
Okay. Now I just wanted to dive into a little bit about the tax levy. We talked about overall the sources of revenue, the state aid bucket, and now the other big bucket, which is the tax levy. So I wanted to talk about the tax levy cap a little bit. One of the misnomers is that it's a 2% tax levy cap, right? And that's only one component of the levy limit. So there is a very calculated formula. I'm going to show it to you. I'm not going to walk through it all the way but for those of you that may be interested, you may want to dive into a little bit more of the details. It's important to note that it's not a cap on spending and it's not a cap on individual tax bills. It's just one component, which is the CPI that goes into the formula. Oops. Okay. So when we're talking about 2%, basically that's the inflation factor that's part of the formula. So this is data regarding what that CPI number has been in part of the formula. You can see this is the red line. So the 2% that's been part of that tax levy cap formula is the red line. You can see it's been 2% since 2022 all the way to 2025. Back in 2021, it did dip below 2%, and then 2020, it was just slightly below 2%. The blue line is the inflation factor. So we all know post-COVID, the inflation went up significantly. However, when the tax levy cap formulas were being calculated, districts were still limited to that 2% level. They couldn't address or adjust their levy to address inflationary pressures. So just wanted to show how the inflation compares to that 2% component that's in the formula. Very high level, very simplified. The tax levy cap, basically we start the calculation with taking the prior year tax levy. We take that allowable growth factor, that 2%. We think it's going to be 2%. So I did want to back up and make one more point. In 2025, you see that it's getting closer to the inflation mark and the 2% level. We do not know what this number is going to be for 26, 27 yet. That hasn't been released, but it's looking like it's going to be close. So it probably will be 2%, but we'll know that, leading into January. But with that, there's a conversation that inflation may continue to come down, perhaps. So, there could be a point where it dips below that. But right now, we're we're thinking at least for 26, 27, it'll be at 2%. So basically we start with that prior year tax levy. We include the CPI, and then there's some exclusions. And basically the result is what our allowable tax levy limit is. This is the actual formula. It's very involved. Pilots, we have to reverse prior year numbers. We have to add in current year numbers. But it's a very complicated formula that we have to go through every year, but that's just for your reading pleasure at some point if you ever have any questions or curious about the components. And then I did want to also show what our tax cap calculation looked like for 25, 26. So just reviewing this, because what will happen, usually the second board meeting in February, we'll go through the actual preliminary tax cap filing that we have to do for March 1st. So you can see what kind of components directly impact East Greenbush. Basically, if there's been any growth in our tax base, there's a factor that's Department of Tax and Finance releases that will provide some additional levy growth. We don't know what that is. We have to look at how our change in our pilot agreements. So like last year, you can see pilot agreements were at 6.1 million, and then down further the page, it had decreased going into the next year, 5.8. So when there was a decrease in pilot revenues, it gave us more levying power, so that our levy was able to go up by 300,000. If the reverse happens, then our levy would be reduced, by the reverse of that. And then also our capital tax levy. So we've been talking about this tax neutral project. So generally we should expect that the capital tax levy exclusion shouldn't have really an impact on our tax levy cap. So last year our levy cap was at 3.19%, but there was a decision to exceed that tax levy levy limit to 4.8%, and we were successful with that. So instead of the levy cap of 1.8 million, the district was able to have the levy increase at 2.8 million. And then this is just some historical data. Some of you may be familiar with this slide, just to provide what the average tax cap is. It's the green. The green is the tax cap over the last 10 years. And the blue is the actual tax levy increases. And you can see that the district did exceed the tax cap for the 25-26 year, but then you can see what had occurred in following years, previous years with that. So in the last 5 years, our average tax cap was 2.78%, and the average tax levy was 1.17%. So over the last several years, the district has been under the tax cap on average.
Can you explain the 26, 27, 1% tax levy and the 1% budget?
Yep. So this is just to give you a little bit of a picture of what 1% increase in the tax levy looks like in terms of dollars. So our total tax levy is $61.8 million. So just to kind of start to frame in your mind, like when we're talking about how much additional revenues come into the district for every 1% increase in the tax levy is equivalent to $618,000. So if the tax levy increase was 2%, that, it would be 2 times that amount.
So the tax levy is, so the tax levy is, it would be 618,000, but our budget would go up by 1.15 million.
Nope, these are just actually data references. So it's not saying that one has a relationship to another. So basically what I was just trying to reflect there is what the equivalent what's 1% increase in the budget. So 1% increase in the budget is equivalent to $1.1 million. And then just for a point of reference, and then just increasing the tax levy by 1% is equivalent to $618,000.
Sorry. We raised 61.8 million in taxes. If we went up 1%, the payment that would be received will be 61.8 plus 600,000. But our budget increase will be 618,000.
If you were to balance your budget that
Yeah.
way,
Okay.
without any other revenue increases
Right.
or, so.
And the other piece is too, is that the increases compound annually. So So if you 1% increase this year, you have that 618 perpetually for future years. So depending upon how you see the future financial picture, is better to increase earlier than later, even when you're thinking conservatively about how you wish to look forward towards your finances. So I think that's like one of the importance of the 618. So like 3 years from now, when we think 5 years out, it's like 618, 618, 618. So there's less pressure looking forward. So no matter how, you want to.
So tax cap was 319, so you could increase one. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, so the point of that little gray data, it's just a data point just to kind of frame like if you were to increase the tax levy by 1%, how many additional dollars would that bring into the district? If the budget went up by 1%, that's equivalent to $1.1 million. Okay. So Jesse, you just took care of the slide. So this is just mathematics on the tax levy. I think it's just important to have a baseline understanding of what it means when, if the tax levy is going up by 1%, or if there's a decision to not increase it by 1%, what that just means. So just the mathematics behind that. So as Jesse was just mentioning, in that base year raising that 1% tax levy, what could that mean if it didn't go up 1%? 3 years out, that's equivalent to almost $2 million. So just a little mathematics. I think it's important just to have an understanding of that concept.
So it's like even looking at the 4.8 that we did last year, out of the slide where you're showing it was $1 million plus. So like over those 3 years, it's going to be a $3 million additional revenue versus if we went directly at the cap that we're going to have. So that one increase took pressure off of the future years just from that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions on revenues for the moment? Okay. So let's talk about the expenditure side of the house. Basically, the budget is broken up. We're required by law to report in the budget packet. The budget's actually broken out into 3 major areas: the program, capital, and administrative. So our program budget is 75% of the budget. And we'll go into a little bit of what's included under these. And then the capital is 13% and administrative is 12%. The one thing that's different than what you see in the regular budget information is that employee benefits, you'll see it just a lump sum as a separate budget lines. In the 3-part budget, the employee benefits get allocated out to the program, capital, and administrative. So it's a little bit different look at it. It's just something that I just wanted to point out specifically.
Just repeat that again.
Yep. So when we look at our objects of expense, so in our budget packet, you're going to see all of our different function areas, and then there's some undistributed categories. One of them is employee benefits. So you're going to see in our budget packet that employee benefits are in the $30 million range separately. When we look at it at this level, at this very high level, we take that $30 million and it gets allocated to how much of that is related to program, how much is related to capital, and how much is related to administrative. So when we go look at like the administrative category in a couple slides from now, you're going to see that administrative number is like $11 million. And that's because it doesn't have the benefit. The benefits are in this number. So it's just a different way of presenting those components.
I have a quick comment. I think looking forward, I think we have to be very cautious about our communication about the budget, right? Like, and what I'm saying is that because we know we're facing uncertainty, right? Like that's for sure, right? And one of the ways you face uncertainty is to hedge against that uncertainty, right? Certainly. The challenge is that I think there's a lot of community pressure, right, with finances. Like one of the reasons why it was so low during that period of time is that, right, we were coming out of COVID. It was a time where there was a lot of pressure. So I think just the way that we even approach, right, that uncertainty, communicate around it. That was one of my, when I was talking about Mr. Simon's minimum assignment, that was part of it, just how we communicate, just saying, we're looking at everything, right? We're doing our best, right, to keep everything as low as possible. And if there's anything that hiccups, how do we communicate around, we adjust it like this because, right? Because I think the community has to know, right, that we're doing the best that we can. So when we represent something, right, they see it exactly that, so whether we're approaching an increase, whether we're trying to keep it flat, whether we're looking at a decrease, however the approach is, it's just being open, right? Like having that fiduciary or concept. But I just wanted to just say just.
Well, that's a good point, Jesse, because I think in the next part of the agenda, the budget calendar talks about the board giving direction to the administration on the budget. And these conversations are critical because it's important that the administration understand what is the board's thoughts. We represent the community, right? And what is the best for students, families, and the community in balancing those factors out. So it's important to think over the next month, what is it as board members you think is going to be good guidance for the administration, given the data? I suggest people go look at the website, the budget and tax finance documents historically, and all those things, because we have to make some decisions. And, giving the administration guidance, at least some general thoughts on what we think is important to the community and to the district, will help them to craft the budget. And of course, the board goals and district goals, things like that too. So, but point well taken.
Yeah, I think Jesse, following your comment too, I wonder if, as this starts to get rolled out more and we do the budget workshops, like slide 14 is a great example to provide some historical information on where we were nationally economically, right? Like those 2020 to 23, right? Those are pandemic years, and we're coming out of the pandemic, and that's an important context piece as we go to the vote and everything. And otherwise, Jen, you probably have some great context of what else was happening economically that I think just provides the public who aren't in the weeds on this some great sort of just, contextual information.
I have a question on employee benefits are distributed to the three components. I know you brought that up slightly, so I understand program. With capital, is it just that it's the second point there where it's maintenance and custodial staff and benefits? Right.
So, yep. So we'll go over the.
Oh, you are?
each of
Yeah,
the
okay, good,
components. Yep,
okay.
yep.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. So under the program includes the instructional area, our teacher salaries, benefits, textbooks, supplies, the technology, the software that we have. And then it also includes student services, which is special education, health services, athletics, co-curricular activities, and then also transportation, the bus operations, the maintenance, the routing, the driver salaries, and the benefits. So that all comes under the programmatic part of the budget. Then the capital basically is really everything with the building. Buildings and grounds operation, maintenance and custodial staff and benefits, utilities, the debt service on the capital projects as well. So that is all encompassing on the capital component. So it's basically everything that's supporting facilities. And then the last part is administrative, which includes the Board of Education, Superintendent's Office, the administrators district-wide, curriculum and professional development, business office, auditing, legal. There's many other areas too, but those are some of the primary components, and also the benefits associated with that. So that was the big three-part budget: program, capital, administrative. Now we look at it a little bit differently. So this does not include employee benefits allocated. You can see it's a separate line. So when we look at the budget, we have these function areas, and you're going to see this in the detailed budget packet, how it goes through all the line item budget. It starts out with general support and breaks into many categories, which is at the 11.5 million. So that's 10% of the budget. That general support does not include the employee benefits. That's separated out. Okay, so just that different look on how the budgets are presented. Then we have our instructional category, which does include instructional administration and improvement, the teaching area, instructional media. So that's IT and the softwares that are related. Pupil services, which includes the special education, athletics, health. That is all under that total instruction area of $57 million, which is 50% of the total budget, not including the benefits.
Quick question, Jen. Last year, we were like 40% increase on the health benefit. I hate to ask you such a specific question, but I'm just wondering, where are we at this year? Are we seeing like a similar increase as we did last year at this point in time? I know that was like the biggest driver. It was like a $4 million. It was like
So the budgetary increase, we don't have new information to go into the next new year.
Gotcha.
And we're still analyzing where we are in 26, 27. So that process is just starting. Our transportation budget is 6%. Employee benefits account for 30%. And the debt service is 5% of the total budget. So just by function area of the district.
So so could you explain transfers? I get
Transfers?
Debt service with transfers, and then what transfers?
Yep, one of the transfers, it's small. One piece is for the non-aided portion of our extended school year program. So our extended school year program is funded out of our special aid fund. And generally, that is an 80% aided level based on actual expenditures. The 20% that's unaided is basically supported by the general fund. So it's a transfer that goes to support that. The other piece is a transfer that we have been holding related to the school lunch fund. So in the past, the general fund had supported the school lunch fund. There's a lot has changed in the last 18 months with the school lunch fund because we are community eligible. So there's free school and lunch and our federal reimbursement has increased. We have not had to use this line item to support the school lunch fund. However, it's been kind of a holding place in the event, something comes down the line in the future where there needed to be some additional support for that, but we don't see that in the immediate future.
So the transfer has to be transferred from the state to us?
Oh,
That's
I'm
why it's
sorry. So
0%?
basically, this is our
Is that-
general fund. So the general
transfer
fund,
fund.
yep. So
Okay.
basically, our school lunch program is accounted for in a separate fund. So it's in a separate account. It's accounted for separately.
Yeah.
So anything that is supporting those separate accounts, the school lunch fund or the ESY extended school year summer special education program, is accounted for in a separate account, completely
So
separate from the general fund. So
we
in
transfer
order,
it out. in
so
case
we
of
have to
expansion.
transfer it out of the general fund into those
Okay.
other accounts to support those programs that are accounted for elsewhere.
Thank you.
Looking at the three-part budget, I would just say, looking at capital, there's no discretion in that 13%, pretty much, right? I mean, when you talk about if we have to make budget cuts at some point, number 2 can't be changed, it looks like. I'm not saying you can or not, but I'm just trying to, in my mind.
So there is a danger in deferred maintenance.
Yeah.
I would say from my 4-month examination of what we were spending in facilities, we were very close to having exactly what we need just to keep the buildings up, running and clean. And making reductions there, we would see the effects of deferred maintenance very quickly in our
Okay.
buildings.
So we should anticipate, going to Mike's point, things that we should be considering is saying to you what we think you should also add. Potentially, we're close to being almost at deferred maintenance. We need to increase budgets on that part.
So let's pause there and just talk about recommendations for the future, just because it came up. The one thing we won't be looking for is add 1 custodian, add 3 English teachers. We want to see better maintenance of our facilities. Administration, do what you need to do to figure out what that's going to look like to make recommendations to us. We want to see more offerings in more language. How do you do that? That's up to us to make a plan to fit within the pieces of the puzzle that you're looking for.
Thank you.
Those are the pieces that that's our responsibility as administrators to bring you suggestions and plans on how to accomplish those goals that we've now created within the strategic plan and the board goals.
So like, it would be great if we looked at like next year's strategic plan goals and use that to inform some of our.
Correct.
recommendations, yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't mean to imply that you dive in.
No, but no, no, I knew it was high level, but that was
That's what I mean.
helpful. Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you.
Any other questions on the function area?
Jen, do you, in general, do these sort of rough percentages kind of align with our region and districts of this size? Or maybe it's too, a question we can look at later.
Probably, yeah. I haven't done
Yeah.
that specific analysis, but. So then another way to look at the expenditure side of the budget is the natural classification of expense, basically the object of expenditure. So we're saying, what are we actually spending our money on? It's salaries, benefits, equipment, contractual areas, BOCES services, the debt service, the interfund transfers. So those are the types of expenditures that fall under the different function areas and then ultimately roll into that 3-part budget. So obviously, when we're talking about our $115 million budget, almost 80% of it is salaries and benefits. The remaining of it is the equipment contractual, the BOCES expenditures, and debt service. So just to, contemplate, see exactly, what, just where the different size of the budget is. I did make a reference because sometimes what's other, a lot of times, what's in that other expense category that's $11.7 million. Tuition. So we have out of district placements for special education, charter school tuition would be included under there. We have supplies and materials, utilities, our bus fuel, our bus repairs, our building service contracts, building repairs, professional development, IT service contracts, transportation contracts, even the athletic officials that officiate the games, the SRO agreements. So those are all of those things that fall under that other category.
I got a quick comment. Recognizing that salaried employees is the largest part of our budget, 78%. And I like Rob's question saying, about maintenance, trying to say what is the discretionary expenses, like where could we cut at, right? And what I'm saying is that like I'm really not a big fan of because I recognize that, right? 78% of ours is salaried employees, right? And this is just me speaking for myself, but last year with last year's plan, the recommendation to reduce teaching staff, I wasn't the biggest fan of reducing teaching staff. And I would really love to see an effort to focus somewhere else. I'm not trying to like pressure ahead. I'm just saying like if there's anything we can do directionally, like towards but that's my question. Like, what is the discretionary items that we could look at looking forward to say if there's anything we could do to kind of not approach that, right, as a conversation, just as a conversation for us to have in our approach. And even if that's where we landed, I would love for us to approach it saying, what did we do kind of to not look that direction kind of conversation.
And I think that tonight is a very good starting point just to carry that one step further. You have to live with a budget for a period of time before you truly understand it. And when I say live with a budget, you have to understand the categories of expenditures, the categories of revenue that we're talking about tonight. Because before we can start to have any conversations about additions or reductions, you really need to understand the impact either way on the expenditure side. Well, what does that mean of what we're asking for the community? But if we have to get to the reduction side, what does that mean for the impact in the schools, in the buildings, and in our classrooms? So before we even get to that point, spend some time with this tonight, because we're throwing a lot of information for the newest board members and maybe a good refresher for those that have done this before. I will tell you the tax cap formula. I've been doing this for a long time. There will be a time when it gets to the budget cycle that I'm going to lock Jen in the office with me and literally go line by line to make sure that we're understanding together the collaborative impact of what we're going to ask of the board to approve before we send it to the community. It's complex, it's complicated, and it takes time.
Jen, can I ask a question about this slide, the 7.5 million in BOCES services? That's not the educational services for students. That's in addition to.
That's all BOCES services. So that would include BOCES administrative budget, BOCES capital, CTE programming, special education programming.
So it doesn't.
Yes, it does include everything basically that we're billed for by BOCES. And that includes our cross contracts too. So that includes what comes through Capital Region BOCES and some other BOCES that we may cross contract with. Okay. So then just lastly, just some upcoming budget considerations. On the agenda tonight is the proposed budget calendar for adoption. December 3rd is that board direction for budget development. And as Mr. Vino mentioned, reviewing the board goals, strategic plan blueprint, as some guiding thoughts to guide that direction. Then programs will begin to build their budgets and prioritize needs. That's over November, December. We'll be meeting in January with our buildings and programs to refine those. We're going to be presenting a preliminary salary and benefit budget based on our current programming, just based on our contractual increases, what we're seeing for health insurance increases. It's preliminary, but it at least is an early snapshot of what that picture is going to look like. And then the very first budget workshop is March 11th, which is the full complete first draft of the budget.
The insurance is did we find out in November what the insurance costs are, like the private sector, or is it the same calendar as the school calendar?
So our plan year is July 1st. However, when we're part of CASHIC, which is the Capital Area Health Insurance Consortium. So obviously a lot of plan years begin January 1st. So there's also negotiations that's happening between CASHIC and our major health insurance providers. Some of the renewals that are being seen in January 1st could start informing what July 1st will look like. We will actually hear about some very preliminary information tomorrow.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And then January, we'll have more final rates for the medical side. RX comes a little bit later, the prescription drug side of the house. So we'll be able to kind of get a good picture of what that looks like, by mid-January. But it's still early, so there still could be some new information that influences that after that January timeframe.
Do insurance costs impact the tax cap, or are they an exclusion from the cap?
They don't have any part in the cap calculation. The tax levy cap calculation is purely based on your prior year tax levy, what you raised in the prior year, whatever tax-based growth you've had. For example, a big commercial business came into town, perhaps
And that increases your.
that would say that we've grown as a district to a certain level where it is justified to be able to raise our tax levy by an additional amount. So, if you're in a school district or a town or a county where there's been significant growth, residential and commercial growth, then perhaps there's additional service needs that need to occur. So that's why that's embedded in the tax cap formula.
And so the health insurance, I think is going to be the expenditure side, right? Like,
Yeah,
I
so
thought
that's
there
the
was
expenditure
exemption.
side.
I
So
thought there was a way that,
Yeah.
at least I thought it was the town side, maybe it was pension, if there was a cost.
So there is an exclusion factor related to pension.
Oh, it's just
So
pension.
yeah,
Yeah.
so when the pension systems increase their contribution rates by more than 2%, not the change 2%, but like, let's say they go from 15% to 17%. If it's more than 2, let's say it's 18, there'll be an exclusion to be able to raise your tax levy by a little bit more for that. However, 2% into 15 is more than 2%. So.
Okay, all right, okay. Yeah, I got
So
you.
it's a
Okay.
little, a nuance in the calculation that you really, even though your costs could be going up more like 6%, you don't get an exclusion for that because it only went up 2 percentage points.
Thank you.
Quick question. Engaging the PTOs, do we have a plan yet for proactively outreaching, instructing the PTOs how to get involved in the budget process kind of thing?
Yeah, that will come later in January once we start to put the budget framework together.
And I have a quick question with the middle bullet point, programs, build budgets and prioritize needs. I'm assuming that some kind of subdivisions built their own budgets and then submit to the administration for incorporation. How is that done? On a building by building basis or building for elementary school?
Yeah,
programmatically for-
generally on a building basis, but we're going to be like meeting with the elementary team. So, we're a K-12 district, so we're going to be looking at it more holistically. The middle school team, the high school team, our administrative departments in our IT area or facilities. There'll be separate meetings with those groups. And, the special education department will be integrated in, with those programs, those building level programs, because those programs are integrated within their buildings. So. And then just finally, just some key takeaways, taxes and state aid percent, is basically the majority of our revenue source. The tax levy cap is just not 2%. Salaries and benefits are a significant portion of the budget. And then the budget calendar is going to direct our upcoming budget development considerations. So that is everything. Big overview. So hopefully that was helpful kind of to at least start, as Mr. Biano said, like looking over the website, like looking at the budget packets from prior years, taking a look in conjunction with this will help kind of try to get some baseline. It's not going to happen in just 1 year. It's something that's developed over time. So.
But the really crazy part about this whole thing is not one of them is that we don't know what the aid is for essentially 25, 26 yet. And so if you get aid and something happens, then it impacts what we're doing now.
There's been a significant amount of advocacy on behalf of a lot of the labor groups on trying to align the school finance calendar with the budget cycle. And it hasn't gotten any traction. That would be a major shift because essentially we could be asking you to put a budget before the community without even knowing what our projections are going to be. And that's happened frequently lately in terms of state aid projections.
Well, that was even before Cuomo was governor, right? Wasn't it?
There have been times where the state aid projections haven't come out until July.
Yeah, that's insane. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now for this year, I mean, we had the enacted budget is a good tool to help plan for that. And, you scrutinize and look at that stuff, but data can change things. And until we actually see what those final results, it was all, projection based. So until we know that, then we know we're in good shape or if we need to make some slight adjustments. So.
Really good projections.
All right.
Thank you, Ms.
Yeah,
Miller.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Was
Okay. Moving on to discussion items, the Red Mill Sewer Project.
Okay. So the last time we addressed this issue with Board of Education, Mr. Bickle had given a significant amount of input to the board on actually what the issue is. We've been working with Turner Construction. We've been working with Labella Associates on how do we fix this issue. And the one constant is we have to remedy the problem. There's an infrastructure problem in the building that must be fixed. This is not something that we can push down the road. So Labella has developed a schematic plan, which Turner took and submitted to construction managers that they work with or contractors that they work with in the field. And they have given us a functional budget, some of them that we have averaged out to be around $425,000 right now. So the question now persists of how do we address this? And as we started to talk a little bit about last time, we have two options. we can look to the fund balance, so the 4% that Mrs. Mulligan was just talking about, and make the assumption that we take a portion of that 4% and use that to address the cost of making the repairs that are necessary to get the building back to where it needs to be without always having concern that we were just going to have this repeated back. The other option is we can look at our current capital improvement project that is underway. Looking at the current capital improvement project has some nuances to it that you would have to work through with us, with Labella Architects, to be able to assume this scope of work within the capital improvement project. I'm going to clarify a little bit about what that means. So the capital improvement project, as it was presented to the voters before the vote, did not include a scope of work for plumbing and sewer work to be completed within the school building at Red Mill. However, there were planned renovations to bathrooms, to end fixtures that were supposed to occur in Red Mill. Ms. Mulligan and I have consulted with bond counsel, we've consulted with the architect. Because those fixtures that we would potentially renovate within Red Mill would be connected to a sewer system that is essentially not functioning the way that it should be right now, there's a process by which the board can work with the architect to assume that scope of work within the capital improvement project. So essentially the Labella would come in, they would affirm to you in writing that, yes, we believe that this scope of work must be done for all of these new fixtures and bathrooms that we're intending to put in Red Mill, would not work unless you do this work. You then, as a board, would have to, by resolution, say, yes, we accept that recommendation. Now, I'm simplifying that, and I'm going to share with the board right now an opinion letter from bond counsel that articulates some of this, and I'll wait till it gets around. If I pass it down, just so we can look at some of what they have shared with us.
Yeah.
So in summary here, if you look at the first three paragraphs, it essentially articulates what I just said. There was a capital improvement project that went before the voters. This scope of work was not in there. If you get down to number one, it starts to talk about what your options are to be able to consider how we address the work that needs to be done. Okay, it was not mentioned in the initial capital project under number one. Number two on the back says there is sufficient contingency monies for you to start to consider to include it in the capital work. Number three, it would not significantly adversely affect the district's ability to complete the work that was approved by the community. It's within the scope of the seeker process. And number four, and then finally, again, we would need to work with Labella to be able to have you be comfortable in affirming that, yes, we would be comfortable with moving this into the capital project. Mrs. Mulligan and I have spent a lot of time looking at the cash position of the district, the planning process for the new fiscal year. $425,000 would be in our opinion, a significant impact to pull from fund balance as we prepare to plan for a new fiscal year. When we talk about staffing, $425,000, if you look at from employing new people, that's potentially 3 staff members. $425,000 could be a significant repair on something else or maintenance of another part of the building. $425,000 could be related to transportation. It could be related to things that we wanted to do in food service. It is our opinion that trying to pull that from fund balance could have significant negative impact as we move into the 26-27 fiscal year. Now, if we consider going through the process of having this incorporated into the capital improvement project, there's also calculated risk. And I want to be clear on that. We are extremely early in the capital improvement project. And we have to remember too, that this would fall on the construction side of the capital improvement project and not the site work. The savings that we are realizing right now in the capital improvement project are on the site work side of the project. They're not in the construction side. So we are very early in the capital improvement project. However, we've spoken with Turner, we've spoken with Labella. They feel very confident in the projections that they have given to us. But we're 3 to 4 years out from this project being completed in its entirety. We don't know where inflation is going to be in 2 to 3 years. We don't know where escalation costs are going to be. You know, we feel confident that they've made good projections, but there is the possibility that if things escalate quickly outside of our control, it could impact some of the scope of work that would essentially be completed. I tried to encapsulate that as briefly but as clearly as possible. And I'll stop before we start to talk about this and take questions.
I have another question.
Let me just finish the recommendation. It is our recommendation to the board. The board can sit, and we're not asking you to take action tonight, but we would need to really move on this in December to get it included with the capital project. It is our recommendation to the board to move this scope of work into the capital project because it gives us more confidence in the budget planning process for 26, 27 by not having to pull those funds from our fund balance for next year. Sorry, I just wanted to finish
No,
that.
absolutely. I wanted to just, we got a letter from our bond counsel because also there's a legal risk is what I'm thinking, right? Like that, you know, if we go out to the tax, I'm just wondering if you could speak and I'm just wondering the legal risk.
Yeah, I don't want to say there's a legal risk. There's a process that has to be followed.
Okay, yeah.
So the architect, as I had started to share before, has to affirm that the planned work that was in the voter approved scope of work. So when you talk about the 88 bathroom that has to be done in Red Mill, the new sinks that they're going to have to put in, the architect basically needs to affirm to the district and to the Board of Education they would not recommend doing that work because the sewer system that you have to attach those fixtures to, it's not working.
Yeah.
And just another additional aside, as part of our budget for this year, we were able to purchase a new scoping camera for us not to have to call a plumber in to look. They looked today at the inside of the pipes in Red Mill and they're starting to see more backup again. So we know the system is continuing to deteriorate, even with the internal work that we did to try to replace a section of it, it's still backing up.
And the only reason why I ask is because like, just from my perspective, and I'm not an attorney, but I'm just imagining we owe the duty like that we got the opinion to the taxpayer, right?
Yep.
And there's a lot of different taxpayers. And that's the only reason when
Yep.
I think, you know, so I hear what you're saying about the process to follow that we're being advised on. I'm just saying, you know.
Yeah, I don't want to call it a risk.
Yeah.
There's certainly a process that we need to be transparent with the community that we can't do this portion of work that we said we were going to do
Yeah.
unless we fix this.
Yes.
And we've gone to our architectural
Yes.
professionals that have told us
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you have to do it.
I hear what you're saying.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, we are under budget, like $2 million from what our project was up to this point in the project as well, right? Like.
Correct.
Yeah.
But
But it
just
doesn't
again,
fit into
keeping in mind
Yeah.
that the vast majority of those savings is
Yeah.
coming from the site work
Yeah.
and not from the construction work.
Yeah.
The work that we have to do in the building
Yeah.
is all construction work.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the comments on maximum cost allowance and things that we have to be very careful of
Yeah.
to try to maintain the tax neutrality of the project at the same time.
And it's the site work side of the house that is the really tight part of the budget. So it's good that we've had those savings because that actually is giving us more.
Yeah.
So-
That 2.8 is safer, I guess.
My only
That's
question,
construction.
you may not know the answer to this yet, is can we and afford, I don't mean it in the money sense, can we afford to wait for this process to play out with the current piping?
And thank you for asking that question. I should have brought it up. We asked Turner and Labella about what does that mean if we choose to recommend to the board. It's probably about an 8 to 10 week window that we would be looking at emergency project spending fund balance versus going to the capital improvement project. So a couple of things that we've done in the interim, like I said, we bought the camera, so we don't have to wait for a plumber. We can regularly look in that pipe to see what we're seeing. Do we need to call in for help? But we have also talked with Mr. Bickle about, do we on a regular basis, in addition to that, need to tell the plumber every second Wednesday, please plan to come in and jet out these lines. So it is about an 8 to 10 week window estimate that would, I don't want to say delay, it would be longer for us to get that internal work done.
So they think we should, I'll speak for myself. Why would I wait to make a recommendation here? Do we need, what other information do we need as a board?
So,
Do we need a
so,
letter from Labella then?
so Labella needs to come and be in front of the board. So again, you're taking my word from it. You need your construction professionals as part of this process to come in and give you the, not that any of us are architects or engineers, but they need to come and explain in detail what I just explained to you. It needs to go in writing. And then there's also an official resolution that the board needs to pass to be able to affirm.
So to Rob's point, if we do it sooner rather than later, would that help this process
So if,
anyway?
so to an extent, so if the board says to us tonight, we are comfortable with moving this to the capital project, we are going to turn around to Labella and Turner and say, please, in the interim, continue to move this forward on the capital.
Well, I was
improvement
suggesting
project.
maybe if we do a brief special meeting for this purpose only and bring them in.
I don't think
Or
that
no.
part's necessary. Your opinion tonight would allow us to tell Labella and
Okay.
Turner to continue to prep to move forward. It's going to go as an addendum to the work that's already planned
Oh, okay.
for Red Mill. That piece, just knowing that the board wants us to move in that direction would help us to continue to push that part of it forward. I don't think there's a need for the emergency meeting unless you think you're going to change your mind in between now and the next time and say, no, we want you to spend the fund balance. We would need an emergency project.
I mean, it seems like a bond council's letter and then the information that Labelle and Turner are going to share with us that would provide additional support for that.
And-
Would
and I-
make sense to me to move it into the project.
And I don't want to speak for Labella. We've met with them at least 3 or 4 times on this. And Labella has been very clear that they would very much support us moving this into the capital project.
What is the risk of putting this in the capital project, that we would run out of money later to finish the project?
Correct.
And then is there any effect on bond ratings?
No,
that would affect
because
us?
the amount of the expenditure stays exactly the same. You cannot exceed what the voters have authorized us to spend on the capital project. You're just adding to the scope of work because we had this unforeseen condition that would not allow us to complete some of the work that we told the community we were going to complete. But the hard part is exactly what you said. We're in phase 2 of a multi-phase project. We're confident in our estimates, but unforeseen conditions, skyrocketing inflation, things that we just didn't know were going to happen could potentially in the future impact our ability to be able to complete the entire scope of work that we promised. But that could happen anyway.
Right, that could happen either way, because
Yeah.
it's 5 years out. So,
Correct.
Even without this project, things could change. Right. So it's-
Correct.
And this has to be repaired.
This
one-
has to
one-
be done.
It has to
This
be
has
done
to
one
be-
way or the other.
Well, like I said, we
Pros and
looked, our
cons.
maintenance team looked today and they're already seeing another backup, even with the work that they did to try to clear some.
Over that weekend, right? They
Yeah.
went,
They replaced a big section of it trying to do it themselves and the backup was in, that they were starting to see was in a different place today.
So I'm gonna ask a question because I'm on my knee on something. Not too long ago, the board moved significant amount of money out of the general fund to reserves. Right? Not too long ago.
Mhm.
So that reduced, so we had that under 4%.
Right, yeah.
Is
The tax
anything
surcharge.
reversible in that? Where the board had authorized to put money in reserve to change that?
Mhm.
Is there any flexibility that
On the tax surcharge, yeah. Board
yeah, but we
resolution.
put it into the capital reserve.
tax
Yeah.
surcharge?
Tax
I
surcharge.
thought we put it into the bus
Like
one.
1 point something.
Well, yes,
We did
that
that
was
too.
part of it, but
Yeah.
there was a piece that,
I just want to make sure you
After the
consider
end
these
of the year.
alternatives.
So,
before
so,
any-
and I'm not going to step on Jen here. Here's my concern also. We have an anticipated scope of work. However, when they start to get up in walls, when they start to pull things apart to get some of these pipes out of here, what if they run into asbestos? What if they run into asbestos on the roof fence? My fear is that a $425,000 budget becomes a $725,000 budget. Whereas, yes, we're potentially looking at a change in scope of work on the capital project, but I'm not negatively impacting my ability to balance a budget going into the new year. Once you start to pull from that fund balance, whether you're pulling from the reserves or from that unappropriated fund balance, once that money's gone, it's gone. The debt service is already assumed in the budget, and that allows us to have some more certainty as we move into future fiscal
Yeah,
years.
I support the recommendation. I'm just saying that as long as we look at those.
Yes.
potential pieces,
100%.
I'm comfortable with that.
There's been some discussion about the delineation between site work and construction. Are those unique buckets within the capital project? If we end up being way under budget on our site work as we go through this 5-year, is there no ability, if we have $5 million in savings there, to shift that to the construction part of the project?
So there's flexibility in the budget overall, but basically it's about how the tax neutrality of the project. So when we exceed the maximum cost allowance, we're not going to be aided on the portion that we exceed that cost allowance by. So part of this project did include planned, we're exceeding the maximum cost allowance primarily on the site work, because there's a lot of site work in this project. However, based on that debt service model plan, we were able to keep it tax neutral. So overall, the project is $116 million. So if there's $2 million savings, yeah, you could spend it on other things, but being mindful, where are you spending that on, for example, extra cameras or something like that, that's already built into the scope of the project. How is that going to affect the aidability of the project, which then impacts whether the project is tax neutral or not?
And when you say aidability, that's the state reimbursement at the 72%
Right.
rate.
Yep. So I don't quote me on the number, but for example, this project isn't 100% aidable. It's like 85% aidable.
Okay.
So we're only 72 cents on a dollar is on 85% of the project cost,
Okay.
for example.
And if you say we're going to spend $20 million on site work and you end up spending $24 million on site work, that extra $4 million is not, they're not going to reimburse that 72% on the $4 million.
That's right. And that could cause us to have to increase the tax levy to accommodate, those additional costs because of that debt service not being
And the
aided.
other piece to keep in mind with that, when the project was done, so one thing we have not spent a lot of time on is the building condition survey. This project is largely predicated on the work that was discovered within the building condition survey. When each phase of this gets submitted to the state education department, almost every phase has alternates written into it. So to your question, if we get to phase 3 or 4, and now we're seeing this growing availability of funding because we're seeing under budget, you then can go and draw in those things that are written as alternates. But most of those, if not all of them, are already planned in the scope of work of what was approved by the voters.
Okay. And just one more question, sorry, about the reimbursability. So my understanding from this conversations was that we would need these opinions as to within the scope of work to get that 72% reimbursement with this opinion by bond counsel. And if Labella says, yes, it's within the scope of work, is there any chance that the state looks at it and says, no, we disagree, it's not, we're not going to reimburse you for it?
I don't
No.
think
Okay.
so.
No.
As long as the projects approve the plans and specifications.
They're
Yeah.
typically looking at the scope of work on whether it's appropriate to do the scope of work.
Yeah.
They're not looking at, well, we're not going to approve it as long as you're doing facilities work.
Right.
And you're within your maximum cost allowance,
Mhm.
they're going to approve the scope of work. They're going to look for technicalities on what are you doing? Is there asbestos in there? Classroom space, everything like that. But they're not going to go with discretion and say, we like this and we don't like that. So,
My question is kind of similar to that. Is there, I think this needs to happen and needs to happen very quickly. Is there any kind of just additional safeguards we should consider, like a second opinion, just to substantiate the work of a contractor currently doing work to just like reinforce the argument on the need for this? Multiple quotes like. connected.
So it's a little challenging because we have an approved contract for our construction manager and our architect. There's nothing to say that we can't go out to a third. Some of the other safeguards that we would have in place if we went to the capital improvement project, it would then have to be bid. So you would have multiple contractors coming in during a quote unquote walkthrough to look at the scope of work. And during that, you're now going to bring in X number of more potential contractors that would be interested in potentially doing the work for the district to give you feedback on, wait a minute, you talked about X size of pipe, but we only really think you need to do this. And they would be able to provide that feedback to the district. Now, we need to remember, excuse me, that our architect is going to give us a plan that's going to be in the bid specs that goes out public, but they would be able in that process still to give us that feedback.
Okay. And then just a longer range, Mr. Bickle said at the last meeting that the building condition survey was none of this was identified. And it just, as we sort of think about like deferred maintenance and budgeting, I don't know what that process entails, but do we need to I don't know, is that done in-house or out? Do we
So,
outsource that? And
yeah.
do we need a different outsourcing?
So one of the shifts that did happen 2 years ago, Jen, or is it 3 years ago?
2022.
So in 2022, the previous district architect that was employed that did complete the previous building condition survey is no longer with the district.
Okay.
So your district architect comes in every 5 years and completes your building condition survey in collaboration with the district maintenance team. I don't think it's by accident that there's a different
Yeah.
architect
And
here
that's-
now. So there's our opportunity to give feedback when we do that. And then it's prioritized by the board and the district to figure out, okay, what can we afford and what do we do first? So I think that as we get ready to do that new one next year,
Okay.
then we have to look at this all very critically, knowing that funding is,
Mhm.
it's only going to get even more and more difficult to fund these projects and how we have to complete this required work.
Just to Sam's point, like I remember we spoke about like a short-term solution, a long-term solution. Is the 400,000 the short-term
No,
solution? Okay.
this is the complete replacement of the infrastructure.
Okay.
And keep in mind too, one of the things that was part of the capital improvement project, because we're building a new playground at Red Mill, it was planned that from the building out, they were going to completely relocate that pipe. So that also all the way out to the town connection will be completed. This will just put new infrastructure inside the building to connect that to.
Got it.
Is there an estimate on how much is already spent, right? We're incurring costs for everything that's been done
Yeah.
Mhm.
in
From,
this emergency situation. So the impact of that on that capital part of the budget has been significant already.
Is that
Um,
on capital budget or is that?
It would be part of our facilities, our general fund facilities budget. So yeah, we
We-
had some remediation.
we can get that
Yeah,
together
we
so
can
we can
put
get
that
you an
together.
exact number. It has been significant.
Right? And it will continue to be significant.
Correct. Correct. So having some assumption of how the board feels about this would help us to plan moving forward. If the board feels strongly that it is a good idea to consider putting this in the capital project, that will allow us to start to put the building blocks in place for the first meeting in December, to have the proper people here to speak with you, the resolutions that you would need. Or if you want a little bit more time, obviously, we might.
I support the capital project. Yeah.
You know, if you do want more time, you know, the only thing I would say is we might need an emergency meeting in between if you would want to reconsider the potential of going to an emergency project and taking this from fund balance. But if not, we could plan for the December 3rd meeting. We could have the architect and all of the proper resolutions ready for you and be able to move this forward as fast as we can. So
Do we need a motion on the floor?
Uh,
Or just-
I think just some
Just
good
informal
Yeah.
informal
I
directions.
support capital project.
on the capital project.
Yes, I support capital project.
I'd say if by any chance this can go more quickly, we're open to an emergency meeting. So,
Okay, I don't think with the capital project that would help us at this point, but we'll
Okay.
certainly talk with Turner, LaBella and council again. The biggest thing is now that they have to start to prepare the addendum to go with the submittal to the state education department to get this approved. But we'll certainly ask those questions to make sure that we have that as clear as possible. So what that will mean for the December 3rd meeting, like I said, we will have Labella here. We will make sure that the board gets ahead of time the resolutions that you would have to consider, so you would see those. And if the board is comfortable, we can have you approve those resolutions at the December 3rd meeting.
Yeah, the second is Phillips, if at some point it does become more helpful to have an emergency meeting or something, like, because like Ms. Heron was saying, we're already putting money into this that's going nowhere if it's not solving the problem. And also, I just don't know with weather, like if they're digging underground, if they're okay doing it all winter, or is that a
So
factor?
all of this is crawl space under the building.
Oh, okay, so it's not.
Yeah, the outdoor section obviously would be deferred to the spring, but all of this is in the crawl space. It's not comfortable, but
Yeah.
obviously they can complete the work all throughout the school year.
Depending upon the temperature of the ground, I don't know, but bids and all that things and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that actually brings up, I mean, we have to fund this regardless, right? So is, could a notice to proceed be effective tomorrow? And then can the back end source?
I just think we need to be cautious about going through the proper steps of the recommendations of bond council before we put anything out, so that the board has an opportunity to hear directly from your architect and then pass a resolution that's necessary before we do. I'm just hesitant for purposes of being open with the community that we go through that process before we do. I'd be hesitant to recommend to the board not to follow the steps, because again, your bond counsel is what protects you in a matter like this, because we are shifting what the voters did approve for the capital project, and we want to make sure we go through the steps to protect the district, the voters, and the money that they're authorizing us to spend.
But that's where if the architects are ready to present before December 3rd, you know, if there's a quorum that could meet before then, I think many of us would be willing.
Yeah, if we get any feedback that they believe that it will move it through state ed faster, we'll absolutely bring that to you as quick as possible. It's state ed and fast, I don't know if they go together.
It's just, it's unique. The timing of how everything is lining up is actually working out. So, I mean, it's just, you know, our Red Mill project happens to be happening at the same time. So there's a lot of things that are lining up. So December 3rd,
Mhm.
it will be okay. Like everything's kind of marching in order.
Yeah.
So just in terms of that project approval and the bids coming in, it's
Yeah.
aligning nicely. So I think things are in good shape for that.
All right, we will prepare for December 3rd, but if anything comes up where there's benefit of doing it sooner, we'll let you know as quickly as possible.
Sounds good. Regular business, the shared transportation contract with Greenbush Central School District. Did anybody have any questions or comments? Motion to approve. Rob, second. Kathy, all those in favor? Okay. The budget calendar and district vote for 2026-27. Any questions or comments? Motion to approve. RP, second. Rob, all those in favor? Okay. Moving on to committee reports. Finance and audit.
Okay, Monday evening, we had our first Finance and Audit Committee meeting of the year, which is usually a really big meeting of the year because our 24-25 fiscal year financial statement audit is presented at that meeting. So we had our new auditors, MMB, that were brought on this year. It was a good experience with them. They were very thorough. We are going to have a clean opinion on our financial statements, our general financial statements. It's good news. There was, and as we discussed when we were doing the reserve plan, because we exceeded the 4% of fund balance, that it was noted as a non-compliance finding, but our the partner on the engagement confirmed that many districts do that. There's some background information regarding our financial statements in the committee minutes. They're basically presented in two ways: on a government-wide basis, which includes all of the long-term liabilities that the district has. So if you're reviewing the financial statements and you see a very large deficit of $105 million, it's to be known that basically our other post-employment benefit obligations are included in that liability calculation and is part of that deficit position. And really where to look is at our governmental fund level, which is closer to our annual budget in terms of that basis of accounting. So we went through that. Something that is different this year, basically our single audit, which is the audit over our federal expenditures, our federal awards. There's a compliance supplement that the auditors need to use to guide them through the audit procedures for that. There was a draft compliance supplement that was issued in May, and it hasn't been finalized. So they perform their audit procedures based on that compliance supplement, but they're not able to finalize. And with the government shutdown, there's no new information coming out right at the moment. So the single audit issuance is going to be delayed, but as long as everything holds steady with the work that they did, we'll be able to issue final single audit statements later. Those are typically due 9 months after the end of the fiscal year, so we still have some time with that. There was one finding regarding procurement that was noted that was common in districts, is verification of debarred and suspended contractors. So we did implement a process for that, and we didn't have any issues with the existing vendors that we had. There was also the audit of an extra classroom activity fund. It's a little bit different approach this firm takes with extra classroom funds. So these are all of our extracurricular student activity clubs, which are very cash dependent. And so there's inherent risk overall that there's no way to verify that all of the cash actually came in and was accounted for. So with that, the auditors, they're in the opinion that they cannot they qualify their opinion for that inherent risk. It's nothing that the district is doing incorrectly or anything of that nature. It's just the inherent risk of them not being able to opine that all the cash receipts did actually come in. So that's an automatic notation in their audit report. There were a couple of minor issues with the clubs, but overall, in terms of the number of instances that the findings, they were very low in relation to what they see with other districts.
Are we making any changes in regards to that portion of the qualified opinion, like looking forward?
We, in terms of like the corrective action plan for that, is that we constantly are giving training. So, you know, we enhance the training, we reinforce it. There's not really a whole lot more we could do in that regard. We're following all of the procedures that SED lays out and the internal control with them having ledgers, the student activity treasurers having separate ledgers from what the central treasurer has, and there's faculty auditors and ongoing internal audits with that. So there's a lot of safeguards in place and training that occurs with that, but reinforcing those things. And there are changes in the people that are administering that, you know, the student treasurers and even the advisors that are, you know, overseeing those clubs do change. So it's a constant training and reinforcement of procedures on that. We also reviewed the financing for, we have upcoming finance for our capital projects. So there is a schedule that's linked in the minutes of the committee regarding that financing. So one of the things that's happening is our prior capital project from 2017 is going to long-term financing. So prior to, so this year it's been short-term bond anticipation notes that have been issued on an annual basis to finance that project. So that is one component of the financing. So those will be serial bonds that are issued for $13.5 million. And then the continuing financing of this project. So our first bond issuance, bond anticipation note issuance for the big project was last May. And now annually on December, we'll be issuing new bond anticipation notes for the upcoming phases. So obviously we're getting ready to do Red Mill, phase 1B behind Goff Fields is ongoing. So we'll be looking to borrow an additional $19 million in proceeds, but there's also a principal payment being made on that. So we have two simultaneous debt issuances going on. And so our total debt issuance this coming December will be $39.7 million in total between the bonds and the bands. And we've been working with our fiscal advisor. We had our rating call with Moody's on Monday, so hopefully we'll have some good steady news or better news coming soon on that. And then the last thing we went over is just progress on investments. So I provided an update to the committee on our investments, and we took a little bit different approach. If you look at the attached schedule that's linked in there, there's some information on what the future market rate trends are. And we took our reserve balances and did some more long-term investing on that, because knowing what the Fed rates are, potentially the outlook on that is coming down right now. We'll probably do better by committing, even though the interest rate might be 3.8% today, we actually invested at like 3.65% because we know that based on those Fed projections that interest rate is going to be likely below the 3.65%. So, so we've been doing some investments there and some updates on what that picture looks like. And then also just the background information that interest rates were higher in the 24-25 year. So looking into 25-26, even though we have a great investment program going on, the rates are lower, so we're not expecting the same investment earnings as we did last year. So
I just want to quickly just say, I loved your comment. Didn't escape me when you said Moody's stable news to improving news. I love that you have an eye towards that, particularly, by the way. Just want to point that out.
Yeah, so we had a very nice call on Monday, but we're waiting to hear the results of that.
Absolutely.
And that was our Finance and Audit Committee. Did any committee members, I know Kim or Rob, comments on the meeting?
No,
Nope.
nothing for me.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, next up, curriculum and instruction.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what we're doing with this money. All of our teachers have been working hard around curriculum and instruction. So one of the things we've been doing is committees have been meeting for report card revisions, and we've made minor revisions this year. One of the things we've done is to really make sure that our K-5 report cards are aligned to our adopted programs. And that work has been very fruitful, and we have produced some really nice updated report cards that are actually going to be posted on the website shortly, but right now the teachers have access to them. The other thing that I wanted to report is that our program reviews that we have this year for English language learners and school counselors they're progressing nicely, and both of them had their mission statements endorsed. And I wanted to just report that in their mission statements, both of them really, one of the things I've asked for this year moving forward is to make sure that they're really focusing on the portrait of a graduate and new career pathways, career and college readiness, 21st century learning, soft skills, and both of them really did a nice job of incorporating those. So looking forward into our 5-year plan for each of those. Our new textbook and course proposals were due today. I'm happy to report we had 2 textbook proposals and 1 new course. It's actually not a new course, it would be a replacement. Both of them are related to college and the high school. We work with Hudson Valley, we work with SUNY Albany, we work with Siena, we have partnerships with Syracuse. So we have those are, I'll be able to report on those shortly at the next coming board meeting. We had reported on our projects that come out of the Office of Curriculum and Instruction. We had some summer work this summer that was funded out of my office, and they were related to the adopted programs. So we had a UFly we had to align, which is our foundational literacy program. And we also had benchmark education. We had to create curriculum maps, and really nice job on those. And we reported on those, and some work around computer-based testing. As you all know, that we have officially computer-based testing 3rd through 8th grade. We had a quick update on portrait of a graduate and the determination to have a subcommittee, because we really have to get, now that we have our strategic plan in place and the board goals in place, we really have to start working towards aligning our portrait of a graduate, and then begin the work that we have to do in our strategic plan. Professional development we had on Monday, and it was successful. Having a meeting with the committee on Monday, and I'm really looking forward to the feedback, both positive and ways to improve. And we have our next professional development in February, and then we have our regional, hoping to partner with Questar 3. And that's it on curriculum. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Athletic program highlights.
Great. So we are at the end of a very exciting fall athletic season, and I had asked Mr. Jones to be with us tonight, but he has a good reason not to be here because our girls volleyball team is competing in the regional finals as we speak out near Syracuse. So the hope is that at our next meeting that he will be with us to go through all of the successes that our student athletes have had in every sport throughout the season. Fingers crossed that both our boys and girls volleyball teams can continue to advance, but I have to say he has given me a summary. All of our student athletes had a fantastic season all the way around, which was coupled by what Mr. Marcioni also brought up, an honor for one of our longtime coaches in the district. Many of us were able to attend the New York State Hall of Fame induction for him this past Sunday over in Troy. He was inducted amongst some really great athletes from around the country, some of whom are in Major League Baseball, coaching, umpires. It was a remarkable ceremony and a remarkable honor, and just a true testament to how well our program is not only run, but to the testament of our student athletes, how they represent our school and our district on a regular basis. So look forward to being able to invite Mr. Jones at a subsequent meeting, hopefully with the potential of a state championship in hand when he comes as well.
So I have a little update on the girls volleyball.
Go right
So they
ahead.
won their first 2 games. So
Fantastic.
2
So
sets, so 3 more to go, or maybe 1 more to go.
there you go. So hopefully more to come, but I look forward to inviting him again.
Hopefully 1 more.
I'm impressed that you have self-service.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to tabled motions. Oh, no tabled motions. Old business. Consent agenda. Did anybody have questions or comments on the consent agenda?
Just want to say congratulations to the teacher and the teachers and counselors that's getting tenure today. Great accomplishment.
Motion to approve? Sam, second. Kathy, all those in favor? Okay. Any new business?
Yeah, I have a quick comment. And I know, and first off, I want to apologize for the way that I broached the topic. Now, I don't think it was the best way. Certainly your point was well taken about process, right? And also, I think we have a lot of work in front of us already, right? So I don't want to be presumptuous about the ability to take on new work or even, the process for how we evaluate work. With that said, I just want to say that I also think that, sometimes it's challenging in big government, right? To be super responsive as things change, right? So a lot of my passion and motivation is how do we kind of, push things forward, that may be timely, and respecting, right, the process for helping to achieve it. So to kind of get to what I'm talking about, is vibe coding, right? Like the concept of having like what would that process look like of incorporating vibe coding into even a pilot class, to say in talking about what vibe coding is, right? Vibe coding is effectively not students coding computer programs without explicitly knowing the syntax or grammar through interacting with AI. So looking forward and think about the skills of the future. How do we equip our students, right? How, when we think about our mission of future-driven education, how do we position and kind of use, what we have available to us to kind of drive that change? And I just love the idea of East Greenbush kind of leading in that direction. I love the idea of us piloting, advocating through, putting in an agenda on NICEBA for advocating a statewide initiative. You know, because when we think about not only how we do in the classroom, but also statewide, how do we attract employers here? How do we develop the workforce of tomorrow, right? That we stay competitive, not only as a school district, but also broader. So like that's kind of the direction that I was coming from is you know, the potential for you know, and I look forward to just understanding how does incorporating that into our process look, you know, and you know, those kind of things.
So how did you want to proceed? I'm confused.
So you're gonna, this is a good question, because I want to know what the next steps are. If I had something like,
An idea.
So
Connect with Lisa?
that is a great question. So I was posing it for the conversation to understand exactly that, right? I wanted to throw the idea out there. One of the things I wanted to know, you know, kind of was the board generally thought around it, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm just one board member. I want to understand from an admin perspective, from a board perspective, directionally, what was the general thought? And then from there, you know, kind of understand process of what does it look like, you know, where are we bandwidth wise, you know, and all those kind of things.
So, if you don't mind. Generally, these recommendations come through conversations between the board, the vice president, and the president of the Board of Education, so that when we meet to prepare for agenda meetings, that this can be a topic of conversation on the agenda. From there, I would pick up the baton, or whoever may be the superintendent would pick up the baton and bring it to the curriculum office to start initiating the process with the curriculum committee on how do we start to have this take shape? What is the pathway that we could look at? The answer from there may be perhaps as a pilot, this becomes something as an after-school pilot. This becomes something just to try to generate interest. Or we may have a unique talent within the faculty already that may have a willingness to pilot a class for next year. We would have to really examine what the resources are that are available at that time. From there, the curriculum committee or the curriculum office would make recommendations back to me to bring to the Board of Education, either after having consulted with the budget office to say, yep, you've got this small pot of money left, go ahead, it's in the right spot, you can use it to move forward, or we need to plan in the new fiscal year to put money in the budget to pay for technology that's needed, for software that's needed, for training for a faculty member that would be needed to move it forward. It's all dependent on where that lands, but a lot of consultation would have to happen with the staff that exists within the district to make sure that we have the resource to be able to move and take this recommendation. I'm just talking about any recommendation. We could be talking about teaching a new AP World History class. We could be talking about a new art class. We just have to make sure we put all the right foundational blocks in place to effectively on the end where we're trying to get this to students in classroom spaces for it to land where we need it to land and to be effective.
Absolutely. And I really want to kind of like drive the momentum of the moment. I think there's a lot of people interested, right, in initiatives like this, you know, with expertise, and it's so new. I don't think there's a lot of deployment, right, like in utilization of the talent that's out there. So I think really kind of latching on to like, so and that's the reason why when I was saying like talking about participation, like I would love to be like a bridge if possible, like, but I just don't want to see it to just go and just die kind of idea.
And there may be other partnerships where, like I said, this doesn't land immediately in the classroom. This could be an after school experience to generate that interest, and that may be a partnership with a parent or a specialist that works in the community that's willing to come in under the supervision of a classroom teacher or an administrator and pilot this with students to see where the interest lands.
it also needs to go to technology committee, I'm assuming as well, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, Jesse, I really appreciate the whole like big bureaucracy moves very slow comment. However, I think if we don't try to affix it to something in place, that we lose that sustainability connection. And there's Peter Goodwin is attempting to put together an AI subcommittee and has asked for anyone interested. So like maybe that's the first step. And then we talked last meeting about the business community. Maybe there's then this partnership with General Dynamics IT or something to like, so I think that there's opportunities to take a really very interesting and incredibly timely idea. I don't know if it's vibe coding. I don't know if it's something else, but I think, just sort of leveraging some of the infrastructure that's being built through the blueprint and through those conversations can, while perhaps a bit slower for sure, we'll give it that, we'll give it the hook, the teeth that needs to sort of have some staying power.
Yeah, and I just want to add, thank you for bringing that up, because when you kind of go back to the beginning of our conversation tonight, 80% of our budget is staff and benefits. That discretionary spending that we have available to be able to accomplish new and meaningful things like this is so finite that if we don't follow that process, there's so many competing priorities. If I told you how many things come through my office on a regular basis, I need this, I need that. And I'm not talking about just instructional. I'm talking about buildings and grounds. I'm talking about transportation. I'm talking about food service. That little pot of money that we have that's truly discretionary, then if we don't follow the processes, people that have engaged in the committees that we have in place are going to feel disenfranchised to say, well, why am I going to bring anything to committee? Because they're just going to do what they want anyway. So following that process is really, really important.
But I think it's a great point. You're like everything in this, AI right now, you're either an early adopter or you're going to fall behind really quickly. And maybe this AI subcommittee is, can really help us be those early adopters.
That's kind of my question, right?
Yeah.
Like, is the AI subcommittee the direction? Because what I'm hearing at first is curriculum, also exactly because I'm definitely interested in AI, right? And it's and from my understanding, from the work that we were doing with the AI subcommittee, we was kind of focused more on equipping our teachers, shifting time down from that side of things, not so much on the curriculum development side. And I'm just wondering, putting everything in together, certainly, I'm definitely on board. The challenge was with the technology committee. The meetings is so early. It's 3:00 for all of the meetings. I was a part of that committee last year, and but definitely, I'm interested in technology. I'm excited about it. I had to but just what's the avenue? I definitely would love. Yeah.
So the answer is it depends on what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
If we want a course,
Yeah.
the avenue is really to go to curriculum.
That's yes.
If we just want to try to generate interest and enhance and get going with the policy that the board is already looking to move forward and put into any space in front of our classrooms, the AI committee is a really good place to go, or both.
Yeah.
I know that's a big time commitment, or both.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely am interested in being leveraged, for particularly in that space for sure.
Moving on to second public forum. Okay, board forum.
Almost said, thanks.
Thank you.
I had a few things. One actually folds into the committee reports, so I was a little slow to respond, but I just wanted to thank you, Ms. Mahar, for presenting on the professional development opportunities. I think a lot of times the public is sort of, we're not sure what goes on in professional development. The kids are home, but what's happening? And when we look at what's happening, training students to, best practices in teaching digital literacy, teaching writing to K through 1, helping instructors with the mathematics software that the students will be using, the new literacy assessments, benchmark. There's even CPR and active shooter training. I mean, we're a high performing district because the teachers get these opportunities and they're state mandated, we have to do too. But it's a busy day when you look at that, and the teachers are doing a lot. And so, thank you for sharing that with everyone, because sometimes I think people don't realize how hard teachers and staff are working during those professional development days. Also, just wanted to say congratulations to Mr. Buzio, Ms. Van Roy, and Ms. Dunham on your recent, as of tonight, officially with our consent agenda vote, your award of tenure, a tremendous accomplishment, and it's so great to be recognized by your colleagues. And thanks to Price Chopper and Market 32 for the donations during the Rockefeller tree event that we had.
Just briefly, I'd like to add that as we move into the second quarter for our academic year, a lot of our clubs are underway officially, and this includes the Students for Environmental Action at Columbia. And I'd like to put in a quick plug for its podcast. It can be found on Spotify. It's called Trash Talk. And, it's a great way for students to communicate what the school is doing, what the community can be doing, to, further sustainability and environmental efforts within, school, town, and then obviously on a bigger, more global involvement level. So that's officially launched. I think a new episode comes out every week. So yeah, if the community would like to check that out, that would be awesome. Again, it can be found on Spotify. So thank you.
Is it a podcast by Brian F?
I'm not sure. I think it would be under either Mr. West.
Oh, so I have to go to the, okay, I'll find it.
Okay,
This is too complicated.
I can.
There's a lot of stuff that came up.
I'll ask my daughter to find it for me.
I'll leave it alone.
I was going to mention the transportation initiative of having the try to drive or whatever the phrase is, but I thought that was exciting. And on the consent agenda, we also, or it was earlier on the agenda, to combine resources with other districts. We're short on drivers, so the creative, innovative thinking to combine those things is in the right direction.
Yeah, I did want to thank Holly William for bringing out the Once Upon a Time. I'm sorry I couldn't make that event, but please keep bringing that to the board's attention, certainly. But it's always great to hear all of the things that's going on, for sure.
I have nothing. I'm still looking for trash.
Well said. Okay. All right, and tonight we do not need the executive session. All right, so motion to adjourn. Rob, second. Kathy, all those in favor?